Welcome to episode 48 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast that talks about iPhone, iPod, iPad, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and related technologies, plus tips, apps, and gear. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and my guest this week, our returning guest, is Adam Christianson from the Maccast Podcast. How are you doing, Adam?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to have you back here, and we've got some lots.
Nice to be back.
Yeah, appreciate it, and we've got lots to talk about because Apple's been pretty active, I think. I know on your podcast you've had a lot to talk about as of late,
Yep.
and I haven't talked since a couple weeks ago here, so I'm glad to be back here. So we're going to hit the news, lot discussion about Apple and their services and iPhone not making any money, and
I think it's making a little bit of money
they're
still.
making a little money still, but I think people are all panicking. I mean, I talk to friends, they're like, well, yeah, Apple's doomed. I'm like, what are you talking about? Give me a break. So you just have to turn around and laugh. And then we're going to have a bit of discussion with our topics today on Samsung and Vizio, that they announced that they're going to be supporting iTunes and AirPlay 2, which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And also some other discussions as well, and we'll just lead up to it. So let's go and start off with the news here. And first story caught my eye was it was interesting to find that Apple decided to put the iPhone SE out there for sale for a very short period of time.
Yeah, for all of about, I don't know how long.
All of about a day, because I clicked the link and it said, hey, look at that. iPhone SE was on sale for $249 for 32 gig, which is...
Did you actually see it?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say by the time I saw the story, probably less than 12 hours later, it was gone.
It was long gone. And I linked to an article actually in Apple World today. They of course was like, we might see the iPhone SE2 after all, because the original is back. Well, sorta. I know a lot of people have been, I know Renee Ritchie on iMore has been really speculating about the SE2, and but yeah, I guess Apple must have found some in a warehouse somewhere. I'm having this feeling, but which, to me, it's kind of surprising that Apple would even do that, because normally they would just let it sell on the third party market, don't you think?
Yeah, they showed up in the clearance store, so I don't know if that's refurbs or who knows where the stock came from. Maybe they had it is quite possible they had a big return or a buyback, I guess, where some retailer had a bunch and then couldn't clear them out and just dumped them back on Apple. They don't allow that too much from what normally. I understand about their retail, but maybe it was a special circumstance. I don't know. I mean, they do still sell and manufacture the SE for India.
Right.
For the Indian market. But if anything, I think what's interesting about it and how quickly it sold out, I don't know. Maybe they just didn't have a lot of stock. But
yeah, it had to have not.
I think what Renee is probably responding to, and what MacWorld today is alluding to. Yeah. Is that there's obviously demand, right? There is a certain segment of the market that is sort of desires that 4-inch form factor and that lower price point. So that's where an iPhone SE becomes a potential reality, right? Is if Apple sees that much pent up demand for that kind of product, it makes more sense for them to potentially make it. So I think it's very likely we see an iPhone SE2. I think it's going to fall in line with the same thing, and I think we'll probably talk maybe about this later. I don't know about future iPads.
Yep,
there's another iPad model that hasn't been updated in a while and may get updated, and I think that kind of cycle is what we'll see in these kinds of entry level niche market products. For like even within Apple's own niche, these are niche items, right? There's just a small percentage of the overall Apple consumer base that wants an iPhone, a 4-inch phone. Yeah. So I think they put one out every 3-4 years, and that's sort of the cycle we see. And it ends up not being a very, for technophiles like you and I, a not very exciting product, right?
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
like it's a staple product, and it's important for Apple to have those bases. So
I can have a firsthand experience having a good friend that I actually do a podcast with as well. He has the iPhone SE and he loves it. He doesn't want to change it. He says like I'm a creature of habit. I don't want to change. I said, well, maybe you should buy this phone so you have it as a back. The cheap one to have is it a backup
right.
because
Like have an extra.
Yeah, have an extra. So, but he absolutely loves it and doesn't go without it. So
Yeah, I've
there's
heard
a lot of SE people out there.
There were stories back in the day of people who loved their Treos, their Palm Treos or whatever,
my
and
God,
you
I
had
remember
freezers full of them. Like it's just stock them up and leave them in dry storage. So yeah, it's something you can definitely do, and people do those sorts of things. There's still people out there that like their flip phones. So hey, nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that being the thing that you like and enjoy. And again, if the market is big enough and Apple thinks they can continue to make a profit off of it, there's no reason not to do an update to the iPhone SE.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's what we'll hope. I mean, I think it should be on the market, honestly.
But it's a good product.
Like you mentioned, we have it. Actually, that's going to be in our topic segment. We'll talk about the iPad Mini and the and others, other iPod Touch too, in just a bit here. Next story, I was on Mac Rumors. Apple's new smart battery case. I was very surprised they released last week, and it's designed for the 10s and the 10s Max and the 10R. Another hump like the other one had, but
battery bump.
I've looked at it and watched some of the reviews, and it seems like it's getting some decent reviews. A little pricey, $129, I think. What were your thoughts on that?
It's another one of these products. I think I talked about it a little bit on my show. When you talk to somebody who has one, they really like it. The people that own them really like it. For me, it's not really my style. I have never felt the need for a battery case, but if you're the type of person that you have that situation where you need, I think Apple says 47 to 75% more sort of runtime, depending upon what you're doing and which model you have. I mean, that's significant. So if you're in a job or you're in a position where you can't be sort of next to a charger or doing top-ups or something like that, I think it's a great product. And being direct from Apple, it's nice that it supports the wireless charging and the direct charging with the lightning cable. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a need for it. And again, I think it's a little bit of a niche within a niche kind of product.
Yeah.
But for those who need it, it's a great, nice option. And of course, there's tons of third-party, battery case options in different styles and form factors out there as well. But, I don't know. Something about Apple's stuff is that, very often it seems a little bit pricier.
Right.
But I've generally found that the quality is also there too. I've had some of those cheaper batteries and battery phone cases and things like that, and they tend to fall apart. And I think that Apple's stuff does last when it comes to sort of, I think it kind of has almost like a soft cover, if I'm remembering how Apple's works, and it sort of folds back, and so you'll get other designs that are similar to that, and the plastic starts cracking after a couple years, or it just starts to kind of generally fall apart, or and I've not experienced that with Apple products. I don't know specifically with their battery case, other than I know people who have that battery case and they swear by it, and they would buy another one in a heartbeat. So
well, and the key word is smart. It's a smart battery case because it's smart in knowing when it needs to be used. It's going to use it when needed, and then it'll stop using it when the battery runs out. But that's what's nice to have about it, is because giving you that additional power. Because some people who are power users, they use the phone a lot. The battery's going to start draining. I mean, there's some days my battery would be at 50% probably by midday if I was using it a lot for that day. So that it does come in handy, and it's a case. But again, it's got that hump. You gotta like it to really want it. It does. It does Qi charge. It has the Qi charging capability, so you can put it on a Qi charger and do wireless charging. So it's pretty cool in that sense. What else can we say? Take a look at the article. It's linked in the show notes. And
you gotta like black or white.
Yeah, black or white is the only two others. People were saying they like the black better than the white. I mean, I watched a video on that, and the white seems to pick a little more lint up than the black one did. So
Oh, sure. Yeah.
but and then the article did mention, does this work with the iPhone 10? Those of you still have the 10, but does have some caveats. So if there's even caveats, I would say probably don't buy it.
Well, I mean, there are slight variances between the 10 and the 10s, even
Right.
with things like, the camera bump being like
Right.
a millimeter off, or, fractions of a millimeter off. So you're not going to get the form and fit that you're
No.
used to with Apple products. So yeah, if you have a 10 and you really care about that stuff, things lining up exactly, then you're probably going to want to avoid it and go with an option that's specific for the 10.
Yeah. So go check it out. I mean, hey, if anything, go to the Apple Store, check it out, feel it, touch it. I mean, if they don't let you take it out of the box, they better, because you want to touch it first before you.
I think they do. Like all of
I think they
Apple's
do, yeah.
cases, and
They slide.
I think I had heard this is actually a requirement for any third-party case that wants to be in the Apple retail store too.
That's right.
So if you go into an Apple retail store, you'll notice the packaging on almost all their cases for iPhones and iPads. You can open the box, actually try on the case, and put it back in the box, all without damaging the packaging or doing anything. Yeah. And I do think that's a requirement that Apple puts on their manufacturers. So you'll even see a case where the retail box in an Apple retail store for the same product you might find at a big box like Target or Best Buy will actually be different. So retailers will redesign their packaging just for to get placement in the Apple Store. It's kind of a prestigious thing.
Crazy. So yeah, but hey, just check it out. Hopefully it's something you like. So other article that we're going to review was Microsoft tells users to switch to iOS or Android as as I see it says or Android as Windows Phone sets for obsolescence. I think it's been obsolete for like the last 2 years.
Or Windows phones. Well, it still was on some Nokias, right? Is that where its last holdouts were?
Yeah, it looks like Microsoft in the article. It's on 9to5Mac. There was a link to a support article, end of support FAQ. It says, will my device continue to work after December 10th of 2019? They're saying possibly, but I think what they did is they kind of leaned towards iPhone or iOS than they did with Android. That's what kind of the article was mentioning. So, but I guess either one can go. I tend to lean towards, I've seen more people with the Windows 10 phone. They lean more towards the iOS device versus Android. So, I mean, at least that's what I've been seeing in trends anyway.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of experience.
Yeah, even with my work, there had been people who had the Windows phones. They switched completely to iPhones, iOS. So that brought the percents up even higher of how many iPhones I'm supporting in my work. So, but yeah, oh well. RIP to Windows mobile phone. The Microsoft, I think they blew it for a long time. It was
it blew it in terms of
I think they just did not react to the market. I think at the time when Steve Ballmer was still CEO, I mean, I remember that that he felt, this is an important thing for us. They didn't pay any attention to it.
Right. Early on.
Meanwhile, iPhone was growing like gangbusters. So although I mean they may have just not even thinking maybe mobile was just going to be a secondary thing, and it turned out to be that way. I mean, they just an unrelated article. They just separated Cortana and Search in Windows 10, so they're switching their gears on that as well with product differences. So
it's interesting to see how they react and what they do. Overall, I think Windows 10 and Windows mobile or Windows Phone operating system generally, in tech circles was pretty well respected, at least from people that I know. Like there were some good concepts in there. They had some good ideas and some good thoughts behind it in general. But I think you're right. I think they underestimated the game pretty early on, and maybe were a little bit too late to the party. It almost felt to me more like a marketing sort of failure than a technological failure.
Yeah, maybe that's the case. So, but no, I had a Windows 10 phone for a short period of time, and I just wanted one. I bought one of the throwaway ones and played with it for a while. And it had its benefits, but It also, yeah, like you said, app developers were far and few between. I think that's really
That was
doesn't
a
help
huge
either.
yeah, that was a huge problem for them. And
Yeah.
again, I think that was the late to the market side of things. I remember
Right.
representatives from Microsoft coming. We had an iOS developer group here in San Diego,
Right.
and they were basically begging people to develop their apps for Windows Phone, to the point where they were offering, you know, development help services from inside, basically almost like they would write your, it didn't go this far. They didn't promise this much, but it felt almost like it, that, hey, we'll basically write the app, rewrite the app for you to get it on Windows Mobile if you'll just, give us the opportunity, and we'll give you a phone, and we'll give you development kits and all kinds of support. Like, they did push pretty hard to do that. So,
yeah. So that's enough from Microsoft. We like talking about Apple stuff here. So
sure.
Next article was in Mac Rumors. I linked to Vizio was saying that their 2016 4K SmartCast TVs will support AirPlay 2 and HomeKit, as well as all their other newer TVs will also support iTunes in their smart menu. Samsung is as well, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I was surprised here that Vizio decided to go all the way back to 2016 on some of their TVs.
Now, this is for AirPlay 2 support.
AirPlay 2 support and HomeKit too. So you can actually access your HomeKit controls from your TV, which I thought was rather interesting. So, and Samsung also announced this as well. And we're going to debate this here in just a bit here in our topics. But it was just an article in that too. So, this is an interesting market. I think that's what we'll talk about with a little bit here with the services. I probably zigged and zanged here with the article. So, last article I had a link of, and I talked about this on previous shows. Google Fi for the iPhone. We talked about that before, how you can now get a Google Fi chip, and you can use it with your iPhone, because Google Fi, which used to be called Project Fi before Google finally took it out of beta, and of course they're a MVNO carrier, which they piggyback onto other carriers. In the cases of Android, it's Sprint and T-Mobile, but in the case of iPhone, it's just T-Mobile. And the article talks about the fact that it's really a good choice potentially for if you're an international traveler. You get a lot of good deals with that, but there are some caveats. The big one for me is the iMessaging isn't working with it. So I don't know if you've had any experience or reviewed any of this information about Google Fi.
Nope. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to follow that too closely.
Okay.
So, I mean, the idea is it's a pay-as-you-go NVMO. Is that sort of...
Well, it's actually you sign up for service, and on the Android side of things, it actually uses the eSIM. But they have not done that as of yet on the iPhone, which I'm kind of surprised, because the eSIM now is built into the iPhone. But
right.
No one's utilized that as of yet. So you have to. In fact, I ordered the Google Fi. You just request it. It's free. It's a kit that comes with a card, and they give you the SIM tool and the SIM card. It's in there, and of course, the first thing it says, using an iPhone, you pull it out and it says, here's all the things you have to do to make sure your texts are working. I was like, okay, that's the last thing I'm going to do. So, but take a look at that article. There's some more updated information about that. So, but I think that's all we really need to talk about on that. So,
yeah, I mean,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry, I'll have to look into it a little bit more, because this came up late in our list of stories. But yeah, I'm already on T-Mobile, so I'm curious. So it's all about maybe pricing and data caps and
the good thing about
things.
And the good thing about the Google Fi is they cap it at $60 an extra, so it's like $10 a gig after I think the first 2 gigs, and then if you go over 6, anything over that, they don't charge you anything. So it's like another $60. So they have some good plans available for it. So. But yeah, no, like I said, we talked about in previous episodes, so I just wanted to, that was a new article. It just came out.
Little update, yeah.
Cool. Little update. So anyway, yeah, let's bring on to the topics here. So as I mentioned, Samsung and Vizio did announce that they are adding support of the iTunes and AirPlay 2, and then of course we just talked about Vizio having a HomeKit. And is Apple really ramping up services? I think a lot of discussion has been in that realm is the fact that allowing Samsung and Vizio to be able to have their content on their smart TVs, that it's cutting into the Apple TV market. Okay, maybe Apple
Right.
TV isn't as important as it used to be with Apple, don't you think?
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess it's really going to depend on how the implementation goes. I mean, and just having AirPlay 2 support, which is enabling the HomeKit support, that's not really an Apple TV experience. That means that I can,
True.
say, hey, take this video content from my iOS device or from, another device on my network and play it onto the TV. I guess Samsung is going to get iTunes,
Right.
right, which means that's purchasing videos, but they don't mention specifically like a TV application. So actually browsing and accessing my TV content. For me right now, the killer app on the Apple TV is really the TV app. I don't know how much experience you have
Yeah.
with it,
Oh, yeah.
but it's sort of aggregating those services.
Correct.
So, this is cool that, AirPlay 2 is coming to speakers, and we're going to see AirPlay support and HomeKit support in terms of Siri being able to send audio, to different speakers within your house, to different devices, different televisions, audio and video. That's something I think everybody has wanted for a really long time. And I see it kind of as an interesting almost coup for Apple, because it's adding support. It's delivering a part of an Apple experience for owners of Apple devices, but it's not, I don't think it's going to be a complete seamless experience like you would get with the Apple TV. So I almost see it as like a potential driver of more Apple TV sales, unless
True.
they're going to get in there and actually write. I mean, these TV platforms are open, so there's nothing to potentially stop Apple from partnering with them and doing like a version of their television app at some point that would run on the smart TVs, right alongside the Netflix app or the Hulu app or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think at least initially what you're looking at is you still have to have the content on a Mac on your network, or on an iPhone or an iPad, or you'll be able to maybe buy some of it through Samsung televisions. And Vizio is also getting the iTunes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
okay. So
what they're
Vizio
saying,
and Samsung. So you could purchase the content and then I guess stream it directly.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
your music, or if you buy movies through the iTunes store, you will be able to stream them right from the smart TV's interface. I have an older Samsung TV. I think it's 2017, and I don't think they're going to include it in the software update, as far as I understand. So it's they're not going back as far as Vizio says in the article back to 2016. Which 3 years. That's going back pretty far. So with a firmware upgrade.
My biggest concern with Apple as it goes to, because you're right, it does feel like a services play. Like this is about getting Apple services. If you have Apple Music, you can now, or you're buying your movie content in television content from iTunes, you can now stream it directly into your TV. You don't have to go through a bunch of rigmarole. You can use Siri voice controls. Not on the TV again, right? But because the TV is not going to have Siri built in, but if you have a HomePod or you have something else, you can say to that, hey lady, send play Star Wars on my living room TV or whatever it might be, which is really cool. My concern would be Apple's control of the experience, because in general, what I've heard with most smart televisions from people who own them is they generally hate the user interface. So maybe this is a way around it. If you can use your Apple products, like your HomePod, and totally avoid the the built-in apps, because they stink. But my concern would be users getting a bad experience and then attributing that to Apple and not the TV manufacturer. And then so.
Well, I'll be honest. I'm not a big fan of the smart TV interface through Samsung. I mean, I've tried to navigate through it, and it's not the easiest navigation. I think the Apple TV does a much better job at it, honestly.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe it's a foothold to Apple, bringing more like a CarPlay experience somehow to the TV. Yeah. So where they do have some sort of aggregated Apple app that puts you into, some sort of view of your Apple content and your Apple, your Apple services and things like that. That could get really interesting too. So rather than having an Apple TV box, you have an Apple app, just like a Netflix app, and you run that on your TV, and that's sort of how you interface with everything. Again, I think that only works if Apple controls that, though.
True.
And that would be the concern.
Yeah, and I like we talked about services. I mean, where is Apple going with services? I mean, they see, and I think many companies see that services make a lot of money. And the iPhone, as we talked about at the beginning of the show, it's still making money, but it dropped. Okay, but they're still making money on the device. But again, they haven't innovated the iPhone in a long time. There hasn't been a lot of innovations. So where else do they go? So now I think they're looking at services. I mean, they were talking about a TV service that might be on the horizon. They're already doing TV shows that they're producing. So, So I think really where Apple is going is services. I mean, I think that's where their next steps are.
Sure, that's where the largest percentage of their growth in their company is right now. Like 30% growth year over year, 25-30% year growth. Where you have iPhone sales basically stagnant and declining, you have Mac sales stagnant and declining.
Right.
iPad sales, same sort of thing. iPod sales, like all of their hardware divisions, they're not tanking. Where this is not doomsday scenarios, but they're not growth parts of their business. So you start to look at what are the growth parts of their business. Right. Software, App Store services, Apple Music, iCloud services. And they have a huge, healthy ecosystem. This is where the advantage of iPhone is because Apple has such a large portion of the market, and there are so many existing devices out there. Those are all customers that you sell these services into. So there's a lot of people that haven't upgraded their iCloud storage and aren't paying for more. There's a lot of people that maybe haven't jumped on Apple Music yet. And now we've got this streaming video service. What I find interesting about that one is the biggest rumor surrounding it is that it's going to be sort of an upsell play, more like Amazon Prime Video is, where hey, you own an Apple device. The strong rumors are if you own an Apple device, you are going to get access to Apple's original video content for free. Right. And then what Apple will try to do is sell you the add-on premium channels like HBO and Showtime and Stars. Right. And then presumably I would assume they're getting a cut of that revenue, although they've been struggling with that too. With we had a news story a couple weeks ago of Netflix pulling their in-app subscription piece out of their app on iOS and Apple TV, which means Apple doesn't get that cut. So they're going to have to work some deals if that's the revenue model for that service.
Yeah, they're going to have to look at other avenues. Yeah, Netflix wants their 30% back. So
unless they're going to try to make it up in sort of cross-selling other services like iCloud storage and other sorts of things. So I found that interesting because the caliber and quality of content that we've been hearing Apple's sort of signing up in terms of some of the shows they're producing, some of the directors and professionals in Hollywood that they're working with. They are working with A-class, talent. These are, people who have won Oscar awards and Emmy awards, and they're definitely not messing around. So we expect the quality of that content to be very high and to not charge for that, where I think they could. I don't think it would be too hard of a sell. They could easily sell me another $5-10 a month subscription just on that. On the quality of that content. I hope they don't. I'd love it if it was rolled in. I originally thought they might just roll it into sort of a bundled service with Apple Music. So where I'm paying, $15 for my family plan now, jump it up to 20 and say, hey, now you get video for your 20 or your 25. And I probably would have jumped on that. But if I don't have to do that, I'm going to be an even happier customer.
These subscription services are just growing like crazy here. It's I got sucked into CBS All Access because I just thought that Star Trek Discovery was important. So
that's great.
So I subscribed this time. I got the 7-day free trial. Got to watch the first episode, and I caught up with the first season earlier. So, but
are you gonna binge and cancel though? I mean, that's another thing that we're seeing happen, especially when you have a service that's just one show. I mean, we got Disney coming on board.
I know
that would be huge in my family. It's going to be a tough call for me.
It is.
And I will likely have to cut a service. So I'll be looking really hard at what I think the value I'm getting out of, say, like HBO, especially with Game of Thrones sort of winding down.
April will be binge watching time for when Game of Thrones comes out, because I know everybody's going to be crazy, and HBO's subscriptions are going to increase big time. So I mean, 'cause I know people cut it out for a while.
Yeah, it starts me thinking, because I do like some of the first run movies that they get, coming out of, that come out before video. And so I do catch a lot of movies there that I like, that I don't have to pay extra for. But at the same time, I could switch to another service and then potentially supplement just with an iTunes rental or something like that. So,
no, it's true. And it's the same thing with, my wife wanted to, rent a movie. I says, no, honey, we have tons. I always buy tons of credit on the iTunes store and the App Store, because you can get those gift cards for $80 for $100 for 80. So got to load up on those. So I said, yeah, rent there. I don't want, because we have Comcast, we have the X1, so we have that experience too. And but yeah, I mean, it's just the content. There's just so much other content that you can absorb. So it's definitely going to continue to be interesting. So and then then the last thing we didn't touch on too much. I want to touch on a little bit is on AirPlay 2. I think that's pretty awesome. You'll be able to mirror your iPad or your iPhone to your TV directly without the need of an Apple TV, because that was unique, because you always had to have Apple TV and do it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my Apple TVs. I have 3 of them, so I must love them. So but I mean, I think that's interesting to see, because people who don't have an Apple TV, it's something that is helpful to be able to show your screen on your TV.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have those built-in integrations, and I think it's a good stair step. Like I said, I think that's the kind of thing where it's another way to introduce folks to Apple technologies that integrate with the devices that they already own, and then potentially upsell them on other products and services. Specifically in Apple TV, I could really see someone liking it, saying, hey, this AirPlay 2 thing is pretty cool, or I like the Siri integration, but man, I really hate, the TV interface. And then it becomes easier for Apple to say, well, we do have this thing, and we have this TV app, and it can aggregate all your services, and you can have this great, experience. And so...
And then the last thing was we talked. Only mentioned Vizio that has this. I'm not sure about Samsung. I'm gonna have to go back and check that. But HomeKit, I think that's pretty cool. You don't have to pull out your phone, and you can get on your TV and control your lights and your scenes and such with HomeKit from your TV.
Yeah, I'm really curious about how that integration works. I don't think it's the kind of thing where you get a HomeKit app on your TV, and because a lot of the TVs do have voice interfaces. I believe what they mean by HomeKit integration, and I'll have to fully double check on this. No, but I think what they mean by the HomeKit integration is that you can basically target your TV for audio and video content through your other HomeKit devices, i.e. it shows up in HomeKit on your phone, and you can control it from your phone controller. You can control it from your HomePod with Siri voice commands and stuff like that. I don't think it didn't sound like it, and I'm happy to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong on this, but I don't think you can say, hey TV, control my HomeKit, lights,
turn
sort
on
of
my
thing.
lights.
Now you probably can already do that, because chances are your lights also do Alexa or Google, and that usually does work. HomeKit seems to be left out in the cold with a lot of the kind of third-party integrations. Yeah.
So, topic 2, with an article at MacWorld. Dan Moran was the author, talking about the iPad Mini and the iPod Touch, that they're talking about potential return. Well, the iPad Mini hasn't been updated since 2015, so it's
never went away. These products never went away. They're here.
They're both being sold, and you have the I think it's the 6th gen in the iPod Touch.
Yep.
But I can see this happening, because I think people still like the Mini. I had a Mini at one point. When I was using it for work, and I actually didn't mind it. I liked the size of it. It was kind of cool. You're getting the full experience of an iPad, but not having the giant size to it.
There are not only people that like the Mini, there are people that love the Mini, love the Mini, and will not accept any other form factor. And same thing with the iPod Touch. A lot of people think, oh, well, we all have smartphones now, and they do all these things. There's definitely, again, niches for these products where they fit a certain user, they fit a certain use case, and those people are diehards. They absolutely love their devices. I know people who love the iPod Touch because it doesn't have all the phone bits and the complexity, and they like something that they can just take to the gym, and it has amazing battery life because it doesn't have, the cellular modem and all this other stuff. So, I think there are a whole series of products, and I would put the iPod Touch, the iPad Mini, the iPhone SE. There are a bunch of products in Apple's lineup, even the Mac Mini, that are these sort of staple. I hate to call them entry level products, but in a lot of cases they are. But they're products that fit a lower price point, a lower barrier to entry. They're simpler for a lot of people. And people just really absolutely love them for whatever reasons they love them. And so it makes sense for Apple to continue to keep these products in the lineup. I think what, some people get frustrated by is because they don't have the market share and they're not as large a percentage of Apple's bottom line, they don't get as much love as frequently. So anytime that they do get some love and we start to hear, hey, they're going to get updated, we're going to get a revision, people get really excited. I think the only thing that brings me down there is I don't expect much from these updates, like in terms of design features or feature changes. I think we're looking at, processor spec bumps. Yeah, it's just bringing them into the modern age, keeping them at the same price point and probably not changing much. Like I'm not even sure like the iPod Touch or the iPad Mini will get, True Depth or Face ID. I would expect them to remain, Touch ID devices. Yeah.
I think just because of the extra cost that'll make it more expensive. Because I think you start around $199 for an iPod Touch, and people don't want an iPhone. There's people who just want a basic device that doesn't require the phone part of it because that's where the expense is.
Or something for younger children, they just want to play games or be entertained, so.
I mean, I had an old iPod Touch. I mean, it was the 5th gen, so that, of course, was at the end of the road. But there was someone in my work who was looking for their kids. They broke their other one. I said, okay, I'll sell you this. And I sold it for probably $120. And for that iPod Touch will probably, even though it's going to be on, I believe, iOS 10, it'll still last them a good long time for the next few years. So, I mean... So even I think for the kids, a lot of parents don't want to hand the iPhone to them, but they do anyway. I think I see a lot of the time anyway because about the extra expense. So and then of course the article mentioned the iPhone SE, which we just talked about, and hardest. So you really have all three of those products that. It's going to be interesting to see if they do make comebacks here in 2019.
I think they're ripe for some sort of spring announcement, along with this media announcement with the Apple services, the video service. So
the TV services and such. So
and there's also rumors of an iPad. I think the star of that keynote would be the updated 9.7-inch iPad, which we've also been hearing rumored.
Yeah. So that. If you can't, you got to think that 9.7-inch has been selling like crazy. I mean, I bought a bunch of them for holiday gifts during the Christmas holiday. Of course, they had great pricing on it. So, but I'm sure they're still selling very well. Versus not everybody wants to spend the extra money they have on the 11-inch or the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So no, it's definitely gonna be interesting. So I thought we would talk a few tips here and. Courtesy of Mac Rumors, I thought they had a great article here last week on several useful iPhone tips you might not know. Were any of these that you did not know? Did you take a look at them? If you hadn't glanced at it yet. Sorry.
Yeah. I think a lot of them are ones that I knew. I almost put these more in the category of ones that I knew and just don't ever
use.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if it's because I forget about some of them, like they reopen the last closed, Safari tab trick. Some of them I just honestly forget about. 3D touch stuff. We've been talking a lot on my show about what hidden interfaces is what we've been calling them.
Okay.
So there's a really cool one I can share with your audience.
Let's
related to
we'll
calendar.
We'll hit the first three, and then we'll talk about that one.
Okay.
And I've talked about this. I mean, I think I remember that I did demonstrate this during MacStock. So when I did iOS in the past. So yeah, so basically when you go in and open up the pages, you tap the little book at the bottom, and I'm sorry, the tabs. When you tap the tabs, it brings the tabs up. Then you have the plus. If you tap and hold the plus, what that's going to do is show you the recently closed tabs. Brings you. So sometimes you want to get back to something that you closed up by mistake. So you very, very easy to do that. So that's a really good tip. Setting a music timer, and it's like missing the music when you fall asleep too. But you want to turn it off at a set time, because in the clock app, you actually can choose timer, scroll at the end, and it says stop playing as an option in the clock timer, which is pretty cool. I do that a lot of times when I listen to podcasts. I'm using your favorite podcatcher. A lot of them have timers too. Well, now if you want to just set the music, if you want to play your Apple Music, have you used this one before? Or do you like to go to sleep in music, I guess? You probably don't use that at all.
No, I generally am watching videos at night. But yeah, I mean, I've done the music thing. I think I often just let it play.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what I say. A lot of times you just let it play and it'll run out. So.
Right.
Well, although music, if you have endless playlists, it may play all night for you. But
sure.
The moving on multiple apps was always tricky. I always had a challenge with that. So when you move apps to your home screen, if you long press on one, drag it away a bit, and then tap others, while continuing to hold the first, you can group them all together.
Right, it'll sort of suck them all under your one finger, and
it's kind of cool. Kind of cool to see it. It just like sucks them up, puts them in one place. So, and then the 3D touch for folder notifications. If you have a bunch of apps in folders, if one of your folders has a little red badge, that you can 3D press on that folder to see which app has a pending notification. And you said you had something that you talked about during your show on 3D touch with calendar. Or was it a different thing?
I don't remember this. No, we were just talking about sort of hidden user interfaces. This one isn't specifically a 3D touch sort of thing. A lot of hidden UI is 3D touch, because you don't know, can I 3D touch on this? And if I do, what's going to happen? But someone brought this one up to me, and it only seems to work in calendar apps. It does work in third-party apps, as near as I can tell, or most of them, and Apple's built-in calendar app. But if you've ever gone in where you're setting up an appointment, and you're in on the little timer, or that you're setting the start and end time, so you get the little tumblers is kind of what I call them, the time tumblers. So normally on the second or on the minute tumbler, it goes from 00 to 59. If you double tap on that tumbler, it will actually toggle it to go in 5-minute increments. So it goes 5, 10, 15, 20. And if you double tap it again, it'll switch back to 1-minute increments.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I never knew that either.
There's a bonus of the 7 tips we're giving you here today. That's great. So let me get through those last 3 here. The simple settings access. If you're in an app like Messages and Photos, you want to get to the settings quick. All you have to say is settings to our friend Siri, and it will open right up. That's always very convenient. Siri's song history in the iTunes app store. You can find a list of all the songs you ever asked Siri to identify. I didn't know this one. Just tap on the 3-line icon at the top of the display and then choose Siri. And then the last one they had in here is on passcode lock apps. Apple doesn't let you passcode individual apps, but there is a screen time workaround. In the screen time section of the settings app, you can choose app limits and set a 1-minute timer on all apps and categories. Go to always allowed and add apps you don't want to lock, and the rest will require screen time passcode to access. So, that's if you use screen time. Do you use screen time on your device?
I have it on. I haven't done much with it. My daughter particularly likes it to kind of keep track of her own screen time. So, yeah, I mean, I use it for some of the parental controls on my kids' devices as well now. So it's nice to be able to remotely control those things.
Okay. So, yeah, those are some great tips I wanted to throw out there for iOS, because we always like tips that are here on our show. Another thing I wanted to bring up, and I guess I don't know if we'll consider this an app or an actual service. I found this service. Shout out to Warren Sklar in Mac to the Future. He's the one that brought this to my attention last week, and I didn't even know about it. It's called Locast. It's a nonprofit website that rebroadcasts local TV, and I thought that went away many years ago. If everybody remembers Aereo, that was the service that was charging for getting the rebroadcasting of local TV stations, and I thought that was a done deal because the government pretty much put them out of business because they said this is not legal. Well, apparently this is a nonprofit service, and it allows you to be able to watch local channels depending on the city you're in. Right now, unfortunately, not in your city in San Diego, but in Chicago they have it, and they have it in Denver, in Dallas, Houston. Baltimore's coming, and then they have Philly, New York, and I guess they have it in Boston now too. I didn't realize they just had it in Boston. So here in Chicago, where I'm from, 14 local channels in my area I can watch, and the quality is incredibly great. I was very impressed with this. What did you think of these services? Did you remember Aereo? I assume, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is actually one for that I'm aware of too for active service military. And they do a similar sort of thing. And the idea is that if you're a serviceman and you're stationed overseas or someplace where you can't get your local television, you can get it. I want to say it's called US TV Now or something like that. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember. Yeah, I've known some of these sorts of services. I don't know how they work with the sort of legal stuff.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of interested about, is how legal is this? But it's legal from what I see. All they're asking for is donations, and that's where they're getting their money. Because I mean, I can't imagine bandwidth is not exactly cheap. How they're getting it, and if you will go on the website, we have a link in the show notes on that. They do have an iOS app. It's iPhone only, unfortunately, but it does work on the iPad. It'll make it bigger, but you get full screen access to the local channels, which I find cool because a lot of times there might be something I want to watch. Although I have Comcast, when I'm at home, I can actually watch channels on my iPhone with their Stream app. But when you're outside of your home, you're limited to what local channels will be available. Well, this service, you could be anywhere and be able to watch these channels for free. You probably want to support them only because they're on a mission to get this delivered out there, because there's people who still have those HD antennas are trying to pick up all the stations. And I have a TV. I don't have a cable box on because we just don't use it that often. I bought just a cheap HD antenna, and it picks up probably about 20 channels or so, whatever, that's on the HD band. This will only have the main channels for the local area, at least in Chicago it does, because sometimes like ABC, NBC, CBS, they have like alternate channels. So that's one thing this does not have, is those alternate channels where you can pick that up with your HD antenna, of course. But you can't watch it on your iPhone or your iPad, can you?
Right.
So I don't know if you didn't have much experience with this, but it was definitely an interesting. It was definitely an interesting a product that's out there. I want to bring everybody attention to it. So, with that, we get close to the end here. Did you have any other things you can think about iOS? Maybe an app or something that you've worked with recently in our iOS world.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with an app for you recently. Trying to think of one that I just saw one that I was thinking about. That was kind of an interesting little app.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot here.
No. I just lost it. I threw it in my reference folder, and it's this little app called. And this is such a weird thing, and hopefully I didn't pick this last time. Did I mention Plant Snap?
I don't think you did. It's okay.
Okay.
It's called Plant Snap.
So this is a little app. I want to say it was free. I don't remember paying for it. There might have been a price for it, but it was a couple bucks if it was. But we had my daughter has a little garden in the backyard, and these little plants started popping up, and we kind of thought we might know what they were. but we weren't really sure. And what PlantSnap does is it allows you to download the app, take a picture, and I think it even has an AR component that you play around with.
I just went to their website here, plantsnap.com.
Yeah, and it connects with, I think, like biologists and horticulturists and things like that. And it's meant to sort of be like a database. So I think there's a little bit of an exchange of information, right? You have to say you're going to sort of share your information, but it's for identifying plants. And basically you snap a picture of it. It will try to use artificial intelligence and some other technologies to try and figure out what that plant is. It basically gives you a suggestion of, hey, I think that's what this is, and here's my degree of confidence in terms of what that is. And for us, it was 100% accurate because we thought it was potatoes and took a picture and it said, hey, I think those are potatoes. And that makes sense because we had thrown some potatoes in there at some point and they were popping up. And so I played around with it. You can also, if it doesn't figure out what it is, I think there's a way where you can submit it and it'll get reviewed by the different biologists and horticulturists who participate in the app, and it sort of crowdsources additional information. So you might actually also be able to get an identification. And I think what they're trying to do with the exchange of information, I think the idea is that they can sort of track where different plants are popping up. And if you get non-natives in certain areas, things like that, they can use that data in research and stuff like that. So I thought it was a cool little app. I want to say,
that's great.
I think I had to pay a couple bucks to activate the features. It might be a freemium model.
Let's go to the. It's $3.99.
Yep.
So, but if you want to learn more about plants, this is a great thing to learn about. So
it was an interesting sort of out there one. Not something I ever thought what I would have needed, but we were just curious one day, and I went, it's worth $4 for me to see if this works and find out. And so I haven't used it a ton, but I know there's people out there who really are into culture and plants and gardening and stuff like that. And so it's kind of a fun one. You can walk around and identify plants in your area.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I'll put you on the spot here, but I actually been looking for a VPN for a while, and I know you have an advertiser, ExpressVPN. I'm not trying to get them to be plugged because I'm not getting compensated for it, but I think people might be interested to know what a good VPN is. Real quick, and I think ExpressVPN. I've been kind of interested to see that I would try their service to see how it is, because I had a lifetime service. I think it was Pro XPN, and it stopped working. It stopped working. So, I couldn't, at least I couldn't get connected anymore on my Mac.
Well, I think that's a that's something to consider about. VPN is the sort of thing where, I like to use it especially if I'm using like a public Wi-Fi hotspot or something like that. And especially if I'm going to be doing, connecting to my email or doing things that, normally it would even be over SSL anyway, but hey, I don't know what's running on this network. I don't know about that guy with the strange laptop in the corner, with all the stickers, the hacker stickers on it, like what's he doing?
Yeah.
Is he there sniffing traffic and looking for sessions and stuff like that? So it's a good way to give yourself a safe, secure sort of connection to the internet, but the thing is you also have to sort of trust your VPN provider, because what you're doing is you're securing your network, say through your traffic through Starbucks Wi-Fi network, but you are connecting to your VPN provider, and then your VPN provider, it's going out from there. So what's important to me is looking at VPN providers that are known to be reputable. ExpressVPN has a really great reputation. And then also to look over the VPN provider's sort of privacy policies and what they, how they protect your data and stuff like that. And so, when that's written in a, clear way and makes sense, I think that's another thing I like. And like you discovered, also just knowing, is this a company that is making money? Are they going to be around? If I buy a lifetime subscription, are they going to stick around? So ExpressVPN's been around for a while. They have a pretty good reputation. The app, and then just how usable is the app? So their app is super easy to use. You download it, you install it. It's basically one click. You can select. A lot of people also like to run their traffic through different countries for various reasons. Yeah. I know one of the more popular ones is to try to access content that's maybe geo-restricted.
BBC.
I think that gets into maybe a gray area sometimes.
It
So
does.
I don't do a lot of that. That's not what I'm in it more to protect just the
Protection.
security and privacy of my data traveling through the internet. I've also used TunnelBear. And they have been a sponsor of my show in the past as well. And I think they have a great service too. Their privacy
put the link of
policy is really straightforward and clear. And they've been around for a while and have a pretty good reputation as well. So
I'll put a little link to both of those for
my advice to people is, if you're evaluating a service, really go in. And I do think the key place to look at is what's the reputation in the industry for that company. And then two, do you agree, do you really agree with what's listed in their security and privacy policies? Because you are trusting them ultimately. So, with your traffic. So if you're not trusting Starbucks and you're turning on that VPN, you are trusting ExpressVPN. Right. Or TunnelBear, or whoever the provider might be. And there's a ton of them out there, and there's a lot of great ones. So it can be a little bit confusing. But those are two that I've used personally that I do like and enjoy.
All right. I'll put those both in my app choices as well. I'll even link back to your deal on Maccast. You get 3 months
cool. Thanks.
out of 3 months free. So, hey, I want 3 months free. So
if you sign up you do have to sign up for a year plan.
Sign you up for your plan, but you get 3 months. So I might even do that too. So tell us, we're going to wrap things up here. Tell our listeners where they can find you and how to get in contact with you.
Oh, yeah, that's super easy. I do a weekly podcast called the Maccast, all about Apple and Macintosh. We also cover iOS stuff and do a little bit of news, and then also just tips and tricks and try to help people out with their technology. People can find that at maccast.com or just Maccast on your favorite podcast application. Should get you right to it. And then if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Maccast on Twitter.
Maccast. Yes, and thanks. I really appreciate you being here this
David.
time around. We'll have you again soon, and we'll talk more about all the fun stuff we love about Apple and iOS here. So, well, that's a wrap for this week. Please send your comments, questions, and suggestions to our email address, feedback@intouchwithios.com. You can follow us on Twitter at InTouchWithIOS. You can subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and TuneIn Radio. Or better yet, go to our website at InTouchWithIOS.com, where all the links to listen to us are there. I am Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. Thanks again, Adam Christianson, for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And thanks for listening, and see you next time.